Will wet dreams ever stop? To answer you guys' question, for those of you who might have this problem, this video is associated mainly with men on semen retention. I assume women also will have this problem, but not so much as men. So if you are on semen retention and you have always wondered if this problem will ever cease to exist, I am here to give you the answer. So please, please, please stick around and watch this video till the very end, because I'm going to try my very best to give you as much information as much as possible. Also, because of semen retention being such a vast subject matter, I am not sure if I will be able to give you guys every answer. However, I will do the very best that I can. Also, because this video is unedited and unscripted, I am going off memory. So basically, hopefully I remember everything that is of the greatest importance. So again, the major question is, will wet dreams ever end on semen retention? And I know most of you guys have been wondering, will this ever end? Will this problem cease? And I will say the answer to that question is yes and no. I know that may not be the answer what you guys are looking for, but I will try to explain as much as I can to give you an understanding why I said yes and no. So there is good news in that answer, and there's also bad news in that answer. However, by the very end of this video, hopefully you guys would get some closure, and you might not feel so bad if you do have a wet dream at all. However, one last thing I would like to address before I go deeper into this subject matter is one thing I must say that annoys me the most about this question, because for the most guys on semen retention, I am certain that you have had wet dreams and you have went online and you have looked online for answers, and you have searched and searched and searched, and you have maybe found some answers, but the answers you may have found may not be as concrete. So like I said, the reason I'm making this video is because I too, once back in the day, have wondered about this question. I've felt really bad when I have had wet dreams as well. Now, my pet peeve is there's a lot of gentlemen, there's a lot of young men, if I may say, on YouTube that there may be a title, the video title may be "How to Stop Wet Dreams," and that may be the answers that you may be looking for. And when you click on the video, most of these guys will tell you, some of the advice they will tell you, such as take cold showers, exercise, uh, sleep naked, sleep on your back, don't eat too late at night, don't eat too much heavy food, because the food, affects the prostate. Try not to avoid too much sexual media before bed. Uh, and the list goes on and on and on and on. However, my pet peeve is that when these guys make these videos and they have the clickbait and they tell you how to stop wet dreams, you click on the video and you're hoping to get some type of answer or some type of closure. And that is great that these guys are giving you guys a lot of information about methods and techniques, how to pretty much subside wet dreams. But if you watch the videos carefully, somewhere in the video, the guys will still say that they have not had a wet dream for some time. they still will admit and say that, yes, it's been a while since I've had a wet dream. And yes, it's been 6 months, whatever the case may be, almost a year or whatever, until the last time I had a wet dream. However, that was not, the video title was, How Do I Stop Wet Dreams? But again, a lot of it is cap and clickbait, if I may say. So, with that being said, you may ask, why should I listen? Why should you listen to me? Why should you take my advice more serious than most of the videos and most of the guys that are actually out there who are practicing semen retention and who are giving you advice as well? And my answer to that is, I would say take as much information as you can. Take as much information as you can from myself. Take as much information as you can from even the guy who have went 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, even a week of semen retention. Because the more knowledge you have, the better off you will be. And when a complicated situation may occur and you do have a wet dream, you may be able to answer, you may be able to find closure and not feel so bad about having the wet dream because you would know what to expect. However, back to why you should listen to me is because if you guys have watched my part 1 video, my part 2 video, and part 3 video, my part 1 video is titled about Triple P. How did I get the name Triple P? Pimp, Prophet, and Priest. And as part 2 of that video is about no, I think I got it incorrect. Yes, no. Part part one is yes, correct. I am correct. Part one was how I got the name Triple P, and I go into some history and all that and all that. And part two is, I think it's me stating that how I went 6 years without sex and I was happy. And then there's a NoFap video, part three. In fact, either way, I'm not quite sure if that's the correct order, but either way, go and watch those videos. And I talk a lot about NoFap. I talk a lot about my sexual history, and that will give you guys an idea of why you should listen to me also. But the main reason you should listen to me is because I have went 6 years straight on semen retention and 6 years straight on NoFap. I'm also a practitioner of the sacred secretion, some may call brahmacharya. However, the brahmacharya sacred secretion, I started that sometime later, maybe 3 years ago. I'm not quite sure, but it was not as long as I was practicing semen retention and NoFap. So again, me going 6 years straight, NoFap, the semen retention, no relationship, no sexual intercourse, no pornography, no masturbation, I think that would make me a credible source and I can let you guys know what you can expect. Which brings me to my other point. If you listen to those guys who have the solution and they tell you that, yes, semen retention, you can stop these wet dreams in X amount of time, and this and that, and this is that, and this and that, I think that is somewhat cap also because a lot of this has to do with hereditary and you don't know exactly how each individual body makeup is. So back to what I was saying, 6 years straight, no relationship, no sex, no porn, no fap, no masturbation. Uh, I could so basically I think I'm credible enough to let you guys know what I have experienced and most likely what you will experience as well. And the reason, like I said, it's not bad that you would listen to these guys, that they would not give you the correct answer. However, someone who has went on semen retention for 6 months is definitely not is gonna have the experience of someone who was on it for a year and 2 years and 3 years. So the longer you go on this journey, you are most likely to have experiences that someone earlier on will not have, and vice versa. So with that being said, I think if you ask most of the guys who have videos on YouTube talking about how do they stop semen wet dreams, and you ask them how long have they been on this, they will tell you, uh, 1 month, 6 months, 2 months, at most a year. most individuals would not even make it a year. And the reason I have went this long is because semen retention is not necessarily a life. It's not something that I'm practicing per se. It's a part of a lifestyle, because I also again practice the sacred secretion, also known as brahmacharya, which entails a lot more detail in reference to celibacy, and much more deeper spiritual practices in reference to bad habits, drinking, smoking, non doing other things that may hinder that progress, your progress as well. So, with that being said, I would say that if you ask most of those guys who do semen retention, and they ask them how long they were on semen retention, they would tell you maybe 6 months, a year at most. Because in many cases, most men do pick this practice up when it's most likely convenient for them, when they are not in a relationship, if I may say. However, in my case, that is not the situation at all, because this is somewhat, this is something that I would consider to be a lifestyle. Again, because of, if for those of you understand, NoFap is basically the first spiritual level of practice, sexual practice you could practice in reference to semen, and that is basically no pornography and no masturbation, and that is what you could expect if you try to practice NoFap. But that is more or less the beginning or the entry level of these spiritual practices, and then you would go into semen retention, which would lead to a much bigger and a much more discipline is needed. More discipline is needed, because that area of life you would require uh, to to develop more skills. And some may ask again, why would somebody want to practice the semen retention? And I would give that this is another question that I think that most individuals may should know, because some individuals, they would go and practice the semen retention, but they don't really know why they're doing it. They don't know what to expect. They don't know anything about it, and I think that is also an issue as well. So my understanding of semen retention is the practice of semen retention is the practice of building energy, and energy that you could use, that you would conserve, energy that you would conserve, energy that you would cultivate, energy that you would circulate, and energy that you would transform or transmute. And that abbreviation, I think that the acronym for that is CCCT. And I'm not the one who came up with that acronym. Unfortunately, I can't remember the gentleman who I knew who coined the CCT. Unfortunately, I would give you the credit, but I can't remember your name right now. But there's a gentleman on YouTube. Unfortunately, I can't remember your name. I'm so sorry. But again, CCT, he describes it very well. He's one of the few gentlemen that describe the process of semen retention being a process that you would have to conserve, uh, conserve, uh, cultivate, circulate, and transform. And that is, again, the process of semen retention. And again, this is, we're talking about energy, because we all know that energy cannot be destroyed nor created. It only can be transformed into one form or another. So the C inside of the first C, which is conserve, we are talking about conserving energy, which is the sexual energy, which is one of the most potent energy there is in the human body. Because we all know from an evolutionary perspective, uh, procreation is the main goal of evolution. So when we try to practice semen retention, we are trying to harness one of the world's most powerful uh, internal energies that exist. So that's where the first C comes from. Whereas you conserve energy by actually trying to reduce bad habits. You try to get sleep, you try to exercise, and you try to basically do things that's going to actually conserve your energy, and you're not going to give your energy out to just about any and everything. And then you have cultivate. Cultivate energy is basically trying to grow that energy, like I said, sleep and trying to eat proper as much as you can, eat healthy as much as you can, uh, treat the body right if as much as you can. Try to mind process, the way you think about things. Try to develop a healthy mindset. Uh, do breathing exercises, and the list goes on and on. Again, this topic is such a vast topic. I'm just saying that this semen retention, I cannot basically go into everything in this one video, but I would try my best to touch on as much as I can, as much as I can. And then you have, just like I said, conserve is just basically trying to keep the energy. Cultivate is trying to nurture so the energy would grow just like a plant or a fruit or tree or whatever the tree needs water, it needs soil, it needs sunlight to grow. And the same way, semen retention is no different. So when you're trying to retain semen, you have to do certain things that is going to allow that energy to grow. And then next, which brings and cultivate, which brings me to the next C, the third C, which is circulate. So again, because of the sexual energy being one of the most potent energy there is that exists, you could expect that this energy will try to escape, which is actually has to do with the wet dreams, because now this energy that you're trying to harness, you're trying to keep this energy is trying to escape the body, because technically semen retention technically is not a natural act, if I may say, because the body naturally wants to ejaculate and let fluids out. So semen retention is an unnatural act, whereas you're trying to go against inertia, inertia and uh, what is the word I'm looking for right now? I can't remember. Em- uh, Entropy. That's the word. Entropy. Yes. So we all know that everything will decay. Everything must come to an end. Entropy never stops. So the body, it's much easier to sit down and be lazy than it is to do some wake out, some wake and walk the park or whatever the case may be. It's much easier to drink alcohol, smoke weed, smoke cigarettes than try to abstain. It's much easier to masturbate than to try to abstain. So entropy is by nature, we just basically want to do what's the most easiest thing for us, and we want to do whatever we want to do without any making much sacrifice. And that is just the way it is. So again, semen retention is going against the grind, and therefore you could expect that this entropy will always want to build and always wants to explode and always wants to escape, because it's not in its natural state. And hopefully that will give you some indication also about the answer of what I'm saying. So to further uh, give you guys a much better understanding of this answer of yes, it will stop, and no, yes, it will stop, and no, it will not stop, is what comes to my mind is a scripture. There's a scripture, I can't remember who said it. I don't want to say the wrong thing. uh it could be Christos, it could be Christos, Yeshua, Yeshua, whoever, whichever name you feel most comfortable with. uh I think now, don't correct me if I'm wrong. It may not be Joshua, but I think it's Joshua. But there's a scripture somewhere in the scriptures in the Bible that says that uh, someone does not pour new wine in old skins. And that what that is referring to is that particular scripture usually, and in fact, all the scriptures could be interpreted in any type of way. Most individuals, might have one individual might have one interpretation of a scripture, one individual might have another interpretation of a scripture, and one individual might have another interpretation of a scripture as well. So script that's the way scriptures are. But one interpretation of the scripture, of that particular scripture, is that when you try to put new information, new knowledge, new wisdom inside of an old mind, that individual will not be able to capacitate, have the ability to deal with that new knowledge, and usually there will be some breakdown or some psychological problem with that individual consuming that new knowledge and maintaining and retaining that new information. That is usually one interpretation of that scripture. However, to use that same exact scripture, we are going to apply that to semen retention. And that is which is going to give you guys a much better understanding of why I said, yes, the problem will go away, and yes, and no, the problem will not. So to apply that scripture, we, again, let's apply that to semen retention, wet dreams, and so forth. Will this ever stop? Uh, when we start the practice of semen retention, the body is used. Most individuals are used to ejaculating, whether it be through masturbation or it be through natural sex. And most individuals do not have not been not ejaculating for a month, 2 months, 3 months. That is very unnatural for most individuals. And most individuals, most men might say they have never had a wet dream, or they can't remember having a wet dream from a kid, from a child or early teenage years. And the reason for that is you just expel you expel your energy very too frequently for you to ever have a wet dream. Wet dreams come about when you try to abstain from having sex and you try to abstain from ejaculation. So that is the only way that wet dreams usually will come about. So for men who are saying, "Oh, I don't have wet dreams," yes, you don't have wet dreams because you have sex frequently, you release frequently, and you ejaculate frequently. But I assure you, it doesn't make a difference who you are, how old you are, whatever the case will be. If you do abstain from having sex for some time, you will have a wet dream because your body is not used to holding that much energy stored inside. So back to that scripture, the body itself, you could consider that scripture said that no one puts new wine in a old wine skin, because the wine skin will burst. And that says because the new wine is it's so potent, and the pressure and the fumes and whatever, to make wine, that old wine skin cannot handle that amount of pressure. So that wine skin, the old wine skin, will burst. So now let's once again apply that to the semen retention. When we hold on to our essence, our male essence, the energy that we hold, that now starts to increase. Let's say, for example, you are at a let's use a different example also to illustrate this problem, this situation more clearly. Let's say we look at a piece of electronics, a circuit board. There are transistors, capacitors, diodes, and all of these things. And these components, these electric components, they all share one thing in common. They help to direct current. They help to direct energy. They help to reduce the flow of energy, and they stop the energy from being overpowering the circuit board, and so the circuit board does not burn up. That is what those capacitors are and those resistance are for. So just like the human body, just like the wine skin, when you may have been having sexual intercourse on a regular basis, you may have been, your sexual energy may have been at, say, I'm just making these numbers up. Let's say your sexual energy may have been at 10%, 10% before you started to have sex, before you went on your semen retention journey. So now you decided to go on your semen retention journey, and you, one weekend, your energy will increase to 15%. I'm just making these numbers up, not to be accurate. 15%. So now you have a much greater level of energy capacity in your body that you did not necessarily have before. So now let's say 1 month in, now you have a buildup of 20% of extra excess energy that you never had before. That is why the individuals would tell you that you should exercise, you should practice breath work, to circulate the energy, uh, things of that sort, so the energy can have some type of outlet. And I'm not sure if I did not even finish because I'm going all over the place. Again, this video is unedited and unscripted, so I'm just kind of freestyling as I go. So I did not complete. I'm going to get back to that capacitor and that energy, so forth. But back to the CCCT, conserve, uh, cultivate, circulate, and transform. So that energy, after you have conserved some of that energy, and by keeping it, then you have to cultivate it for it to grow, and then you have to circulate it, and then you have to transform it or transmute it, which means that you have to put your energy into something. And I will tell you this right now, the sexual energy is one of the most powerfulest energies that ever exists. And when you harness that energy and you put that energy into something, a project, whatever it may be, a new project that you may have, something that you may be working on. You might be an artist, you might be a singer, whatever creativity, whatever it may be, your job, whatever you want to put your energy into, that energy will be so potent that you would have extra focus, you would have laser sharp focus and dedication of whatever the practice is that you're putting that energy into. So that is one of the things you also have to do. You just can't build this energy up and just do nothing with it. You have to transform that energy. You have to transform that energy and put that energy into something productive. That is why, again, the exercising, all of that is designed to somewhat relieve the body and get rid of some of that excess buildup. Some individuals, like I said, they would recommend cold showers. Cold showers is not for me. And some individuals also would recommend try not to eat foods that are extremely spicy. That is also not for me because I'm coming from the Caribbean. You know, spice is what we do. You know, everything must be spice, 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 sugar and spice. You know what I'm saying? Everything nice. So with that being said, some of those things might not be for you as well. Again, cold showers, I never like cold showers. And if if I have to take a cold shower, I will go kicking and screaming if I have to. But I will do it if I have to. But by free will, and I have a choice. No, I would not take a cold shower. And that is one of the things that they would recommend also, that you go and take cold showers also. So again, that is why you have to do these things. It is a must. It is a mandatory. It is a must. So within the first year or two, I would speak from my experience, and I haven't forgotten about the circuit board and all that. But this is all leading to one. This is all leading to that. That why the answer is yes and the answer is no. So again, when I first started the journey on NoFap and semen retention, I did not necessarily know that much about what I needed to do. And someone I was lazy also. I was lazy. I didn't want to do any breath work and all that. I thought it was unnecessary. I thought all I needed to do is try to, hold my semen in, and that was it. I was holding my semen in. I was not doing any meditation. I was not doing any breath work. I was still running after bitches and hoes. I was not watching pornography per se, but sometimes every now and then, on YouTube, you might see a lady, attractive lady, or even in the real world, you might see a lady that's attractive and you might overly exaggerate your stare, you might overly, your imagination might kick in, and that's what they would call edging. And edging is also practiced, and some individuals may recommend that you edge. Edging also would entail that you masturbate until the point of having an orgasm, but you do not. And I highly do not recommend edging, because edging is also another form of energy leakage. You're just building yourself up for a setup. You're building more sexual tension, and then you're not going to be able to release it. So I highly do not suggest edging at all. So again, like you see, by now, I think you guys are getting the picture that this energy must go somewhere. This energy will not just go away on its own, because again, it is a natural act to hold this semen in. It is natural for the body to procreate, to ejaculate, and so forth. And by no means I want you guys to misinterpret what I'm saying, because I said this is a natural act. That does not mean that it is not beneficial, because there are a lot of things that are natural, but they are actually beneficial to us. Medicine is unnatural. Some of the medicine that we take are quite harmful, but sometimes they do work, and sometimes they do more damage than harm, but they would be considered a necessity. We have exercise, as much as we would put emphasis on emphasize exercise is a great thing. Exercise is a good thing. However, exercising may not necessarily be considered a natural act, because if we go back into time, I don't know if you would ever see, a caveman or a primitive man putting some, bars on his shoulder with weights and some barbells and doing squats and so forth. They basically did all of their work, exercise from hunting and climbing mountains or whatever they did physically. That was basically that was a day's work of exercise, just trying to get some food. But do the things that we do today, there are a lot of unnatural things that we do that still would be considered good. So despite the fact semen retention may be considered a natural act, it is extremely beneficial for the human body in many, many, many aspects. And I'm not going to really go into all the details of the benefits, because I'm just talking about wet dreams in general. Will they stop or will they not? So again, just like, again, the energy must go somewhere. This energy is not just going to just evaporate into thin air. And that is the mistake that I made on my journey. Probably within a year in, 2 years in, I had wet dreams continuously. And I was so upset. I was so upset. I was like, man, will this ever stop? 2 years and 3 years. Yes, the time did go longer. Yes, the time did go from me and Jack having a wet dream once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month. And the time did increase, but it never stopped. That is my point. So my point is, as I became more devoted to the practice, and I realized that yes, I was forced to having to do some of these things, some of these breathing exercises, meditation, and so forth, and circulation and transmutation. And that took me some time. So after probably 3 years in, I still was having wet dreams. After X amount of time, I was unable to stop this naturally, because I did not. And that is the sad news. The bad news is you have to do something. This is not necessarily a lazy man sport. It feels like a lazy man sport, because all you have to do is try to do nothing, but you actually have to do something. And that is the bad news. So yes, it could stop, but no, it will not stop if there is no action taken. And even if there's action taken, there will still be some type of release, because the body naturally has a capacity limit. Just like a cup of water, no matter who you are, the greatest of the greatest swarmies and whatever, most of those guys may go years and years before they see some ejaculation. Some may not have an ejaculation at all. And some may tell you that, yes, there are two types of ejaculation, nocturnal emissions. There's one when you have a sexual nocturnal emission, because you had a sexual dream, whereas you actually had intercourse with a female, and then you bust because you thought you was having sex. And that is the most frequent, because again, it is unnatural for especially men to go such long periods without sex, being extremely highly exaggerated sexual beings. And then the second type of nocturnal emission is basically a clear substance, whereas over time, again, swamis and great gurus will also tell you, monks could even tell you that this thing could happen even to them. And the reason that they last so long is because most of those guys, they do not live in the real world. Not the real world, but they do not live in society like the average Joe lives. They do not live in whereas the club is there. They don't live where YouTube, and they don't live where bitches and hoes be walking the streets. Most of these guys who practice this, and you see them go 5 years, 6 years, and whatever, and so forth, a lifetime without ejaculation, they live in the mountains. They live, and that is what they do all day, every day. Pray, meditate, chant, all day. I do it too, but I'm saying you, I still get exposure to females. Still get exposure to cheeks. I still see half naked women walking down the street. For example, let me give you guys a story. This is just a story that just recently happened the other day. I was inside a store. I was leaving a store, and two young ladies were walking in. Two bodies. I mean, two bodies. You know what I'm saying? And from my perspective, I'm talking about 8.5, 9s. You know what I'm saying? So two bodies. They was coming by, and I was about to leave the store, and I could have left before them, but when I saw them coming, I decided to wait. I said, "Man, I have to see. I have to see these coming. Was coming to the door." And I waited, and I was looking at these girls from that's head to toe, and the security, he saw them coming too. He gave me the look, because most guys say when they see something, another guy sees something, he's like, he gave me the look too, like, whoa, you see this, you know what I'm saying? And I say, yeah, I see it, you know what I'm saying? And so they walked inside the door, and then after that, shortly after that, they walked by, and I let them walk by, and I did a double take, and I had to get a little view of the back, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, whoa, man, this is awesome, you know what I'm saying? And it's a cue. He's supposed to be doing his job, you know what I'm saying? But he's a man too, you know what I'm saying? So he's holding the door at the same time, and he's looking back, and he's looking. Both of us are looking back. So, but the moral of the story is, it's natural. It's natural to be attracted to females. It's natural to want to have sexual desires. It's natural to find the opposite sex to be attractive. However, now that would be considered a very minor edge, if what I may call edging. Edging is any type of lusting, pornography, anything that leaks the energy. Because the energy, again, trying to cultivate, you have to cultivate the energy, and that requires reducing certain bad habits, certain things that's going to cause you lose the energy. We're trying to build this energy, and again, as this energy builds, the capacity that the body has to hold this energy is going to fail at some point. So again, now imagine that little lustful act, because I still love bitches and hoes. They call me pimp, prophet, and priest. Like I said, they don't call me pope, prophet, and priest. They don't call me pastor, prophet, and priest. They don't call me piety, prophet, and priest, or pious prophet, and priest. They call me pimp, prophet, and priest. And that is the reason they call me pimp, prophet, and priest. So with that being said, it is very natural. It's very natural to see an attractive lady and do a double take and say, wow, you know what I'm saying? And stay off even for a second or two, you know what I'm saying? However, now imagine you do that every day. Imagine you go out your way, you jump in your car, like I used to do. I mean, I was a prowler. They used to call me prowler too. We used to go in the prowl, and guys still do it today, drive around and look for women. And so imagine us going out there hunting women down, hunting, like you're a caveman with your spear, and you get your knife, and you get your rock in your hand, and you're just ready to kill. You know what I'm saying? So, but I did that also for many, many years while on semen retention, and I did not understand that all of those things were hindering my progress, and I was all of that buildup that I was getting from looking at these women, trying to attract get these women. I would still get numbers, but I wouldn't call the women. I would still flirt with women. I would still do a lot of act with women, but I would not have sex with them. So I was thinking that it was harmless because I was not masturbating, and I was not ejaculating, or I was not watching porn. But the little that I knew, that all of this energy was building up, and it was going to backfire, because the subconscious mind stores on to everything. So every attractive girl that you talk to, every attractive female that you look at, imagine if you look at an attractive girl every day you do a little lust here and there, that energy is going to build and build and build. That sexual energy is going to build and build until one day you just bust. There's just no way around it. And then, like I said, naturally the body only can handle so much fluids after a period of time, that your well will also naturally have to expel some of that fluid, whatever the case may be. And which brings me to another point. The first, in reference to the fluid, some individuals, I would say that semen, wet dreams are not relapse, no matter what, no matter even if it's a sexual intercourse wet dream, that's still not a relapse, because you didn't do it naturally. You didn't go and masturbate, or you didn't have sex naturally. That was something that happened subconsciously because of the buildup of sexual tension that you failed to release. So that would not be considered a buildup. And also the fluids that are released, a lot of it might just be semen, and that's how we understand semen is different than sperm. Sperm is the actual eggs and so forth, the little swimming things that they produce, that produce the baby, and that is different from semen. And then you have other fluids. I think that spinal fluid cerebral, all type of fluids that's mixed up, and then you have uh, 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 prostate fluid that's also inside of that liquid that is expelled. However, the majority of the liquid is not sperm. There might be some sperm, a little sperm, maybe a little bit of prostate fluid, a little bit of cerebral fluid, whatever fluids. I'm not a scientist here. I'm not here to talk about fluids. You understand? Because, in fact, most men, you don't have the ability to know what's in the release because it's not like when you have a wet dream, you have some type of you have a laboratory equipment on the side of the bed, and you put a sample inside the test tube, and then you shake it up and you run it through the analysis of the computer, and the computer, the lab microscope, and you can tell how much is spinal fluid, how much is semen, how much is sperm, and how much is prostate fluid. You cannot tell what is what. So that's a waste of time trying to figure out what's in the fluid, how much is what, because the body knows exactly. Only the body knows what needs to be expelled. Because sperm also lives for X amount of time, and sperm does not live forever. Sperm moves from one part of the body where it's held until it's matured, and then it moves to a different part. And so when the sperm also is not used, and they die in their lifespan, and they die, and some may be deformed, some may not be healthy. Those sperm may die away, and some of those sperm might also be released inside of the fluid that is released, and it may not necessarily be healthy sperm, so you don't have to worry about losing any sperm count, anything of that sort. It is not that much to talk about. However, you will, or you may, or you could lose some type of energy after having a sexual a semen retention, sorry, a sexual nocturnal emission. You will lose some energy, but it's not going to be that much energy. The energy that you lose is not going to be like the same amount of energy that you would lose if you did actually masturbate and ejaculated. It's not going to be the same amount of energy, that if you had intercourse with a female or male, and then you ejaculated and you had an orgasm. That is not the same type of energy. You may lose a little bit. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, you may feel a lot better, because now that excessive fluids, or that energy is released like a valve, that kind of may have took away some pressure from you. So that may be a benefit. So which brings me to another point. You can, instead of looking at having a wet dream as a bad thing, you could now see where having a wet dream as actually a beneficial thing. Whereas if you have a wet dream, you could see it now as your energy has increased. Because the only way you would have a wet dream is if your energy has built up and it has far exceeded the capacity that the carrier, the vessel, which is your body, has the ability to maintain, or to hold, or to sustain. So again, back to the example of the wine, the new wine in old skins, and the circuit board. So just like the circuit board, when you apply the proper amount of voltage to a circuit board, the electrical appliance will run smoothly. It will work perfect. There will not be any issues at all. However, if you decide to apply more energy to that circuit board, then you could get some type of shortage, a glitch, or even a burn out. Some components may actually catch a fire, or just blow up or burn up. And that is the same exact thing what happens to the body on semen retention. The energy will increase and increase and increase, and you have no other choice than to practice some sort of discipline to eliminate that problem. So back to a statement that I was talking about earlier, I said that when you, again, most men may not have ever had a wet dream, or they might not have had a wet dream in a long time, is because they do not hold on to their essence long enough to have a wet dream. And I assure you, if you do hold on to your essence, I don't care who you are, it just will be a matter of time. However, it is very difficult to hold on to your essence if you have a female in your life, or you are in a relationship, or you have a side dish, or you have a rotation, and you have access to frequent sex. It is almost impossible to do so. That is why I highly recommend, and I always say that individuals, be it male or female, if you are single at the time, this is the best time to practice some of these practices, because you now will have the not have the distraction that you may have had when you was in a relationship, and because you are now single, this would be the best time to practice these situations. Because when you do get in a relationship, trust you me, it's gonna be next to impossible. And the only reason I was able to last this long, 6 years without sex, 6 years without a relationship, is because, like I said, they call me Triple P, Pimp, Profit, and Priest. And my numbers are astronomical. My numbers are like the green of sun, and the stars in the heavens above. If you count the stars, then you might just get, I don't know how much trillions or billions of stars up there, but if you count the clocks, don't count the stars, that might even fall short about my body count numbers. So with that being said, that is why I'm able to go these times, these astronomical lengths of time, because I've done astronomical amounts of numbers. And so, like I was saying again, if you went on semen retention for the first time, and your energy might have been at 10%. After uh, a week, it might have risen to 5%. And then let's say when you reach a month, your energy is at 20%. And then you had your first orgasm, or sorry, your first wet dream. This is where the answers, I'm going to start giving you guys some of the answers. All that simply means is now you have grown. So do not look at wet dreams as a bad thing. In fact, you should, instead of, you should look at it as you are growing. It's like a tree. It's like, it's like some crabs. I'm on the beach right now. Some animals, they have to shed and they find new shells. I don't know what they do. They get new shells, but they can't live in the same shell forever. Snakes shed their skin, and they shed so they could so they could continually grow. And that is the same thing with semen retention. It's just simply letting you know that you have grown energetically. You are now building your sexual energy, and however, now it instead of being sad about it, all it's telling you is now it's time for you to practice more. You have to practice. It's obviously you're conserving it. That is the reason it grew, and you had and you bust. So, and you may have cultivated it also. You've been trying to cut back. You cut back on some stuff, on some bad habits, and that is one reason. Excuse me. Excuse me. Uh, cutting back on certain bad habits may also be a reason why you may feel like you have to that energy will increase. So let's say you cut back in a week time, you cut back on your drinking, you cut back on smoking, you cut back on all these other bad habits, then that energy will increase automatically. That energy will have to increase. You would also feel like now you have to release that energy, but you don't have to release that energy. All it's telling you is you need to practice. Now you need to circulate some of that energy more than you did before in the past. You have to circulate that energy. You have to do more breath work. You have to do more meditation. You have to do more physical strenuous duties. You have to exercise more. You have to go run. You have to go on a treadmill. You have to do something that is going to subside that energy, and you're going to have to find something that you're going to put some focus. So you're going to put your focus and your attention to. So that is what you have to do. So for example, like I said, so now you're in 1 month. 1 month, you have done 1 month, and after 1 month, that practice, now you had your first nocturnal emission. 1 month. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna again. So let's say you never meditated. You never did no exercise. You never did any breath work. After 1 month, you had your first nocturnal emission. So now what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna start one or two of those practices, even if it's one. So let's say you started the breathing exercise, and then you started the breathing exercise, and what's going to happen is, now that you implemented one thing, now what's going to happen is, now your energy is going to be, you're going to be able to handle that capacity, that level of energy. However, as time go on, now as your energy increase again, now you're going to have another nocturnal emission, probably a month, two instead of 1 month. Now it's going to be 2 months later down the line. So now you had 2 months down the line. So what you're going to have to do now is you're going to have to actually implement either a longer breath work. So now maybe you did breath work for 5 minutes in the past, and that was what you used to actually help you to make it for you did 5 minutes and you made it to you didn't do anything. Sorry, you didn't do anything before. No meditation, no breath work, no exercise, but you made it 1 month naturally before you had your first nocturnal emission. And then after that you started to do 5 minutes worth of breath work. Now that will make you go an extra month. And so after the extra month, you're gonna be good. You're gonna be good, and then you're gonna have another next nocturnal emission. Because again, all that is telling you is now you are growing. You are growing, and your body is now exceeding more than what you uh, what you are capable of handling at the time. So now 2 months in, now you have to add uh, 15 minutes of breath work, and then you will see that nocturnal mission will extend to 3 months. And after 3 months, now you might have to go 20 minutes of breath work. And then as your internal energy continues to increase, as your internal energy continues to increase, you would now have to go. Now you might have to add some exercise to that equation. You might have to add some exercise to that equation because you I'm gonna move right now. You might have to add some exercise to that equation, uh, and that exercise is what's going to further prolong. That is going to prolong your ability. Now instead of going 2 months, now you added the exercise. You're gonna go 3 months now. It's gonna be 3 months until you have your next orgasm. And so I hope you're starting to see the picture here. So as the energy increase, you're gonna stop the wet dreams. Yes, the wet dreams will stop. That is why I said the answer is yes and no. The wet dreams will stop. However, as the energy continues to increase and continue to grow within yourself, then you can expect eventually that you will have some sort of nocturnal emission. And so now as you, like I said, you started over 5 minutes of breath work. Now you're doing 20 minutes of breath work. Now you're doing 20 minutes of exercise, walk, or whatever it may be. Now you're putting energy into focus on some type of purpose, some type of goal, or something of that sort. Now you are transforming that energy or transmuting that energy, and you that is what you're doing. And as you do this more and more, you will realize that the time it took for you to have a wet dream will go further and further and further and further away. However, because we do live in the real world, it is next to near impossible to not see attractive women, to not, even if you don't watch porn, it's near impossible to not see women that you find attractive, and sometimes your imagination might run wild. And especially, for example, living on the Caribbean island, by the sun, sand, and sea, there's bitches and hoes everywhere. Everywhere you go, there's some bitch or some hoe, basically almost naked with no clothes on. So you could expect to be distracted one way or another. However, those are very small sexually energy releases. But again, if you do that every day, you lust every day, you go hunt women every day, you sit down on the beach and you watch women in a bikini all day, every day, you are most likely going to have a wet dream no matter what. So again, the goal is not necessary to stop the wet dream per se. The goal is to, when you have the wet dream, take it as an indication that you are making progress. Your energy is getting bigger. You are growing like Dragon Ball Z. You are getting your your energy, your aura, your electromagnet energy is expanding, and the capacity that your body once held, your body once held had the ability to hold its energy. Now it no longer has the ability to do so as well. So once again, it is not bad news. It's not a bad thing that you're having these wet dreams. It is just an indication that you need to invest more time into one of the three C's. Again, you need to conserve more energy by not giving away some of your energy. Again, whether it be the eyes, lust, drugs, sex, whatever the case may be. And these things are not easy to do. That's why I'm saying to you, I practice the sacred secretion, which is a whole different level of game. So, I'm dealing with a whole different level of practice. I'm going to make a video also on the sacred secretion. However, uh, yes, again, once again, the the uh, the energy is just growing, and that is all there is to it. The energy, when the red dream happens, all that is telling you is that it is time for you to practice either conserving more energy, uh, uh, cultivate more energy, circulate more energy, and transform more energy. And I assure you, if you devote your time to doing this, I'm not telling you it's going to stop, because if you understand what I'm saying, as you grow, it's going to happen again. One way or another, you could get it to stop for X amount of time. You could get it to stop for a long period of time. And yes, maybe the monks and maybe some Swami or some Hindu priest could tell you, yes, they could do it, but they live in the mountains. They sit down with their legs crossed all day. They don't see no bitches in the holes. They don't even see nothing. All they see is what they see. You know what I'm saying? They sit down under the tree and they meditate all day. So yes, you could expect someone like that to have very little sexual energies building up. But however, for the rest of us who do live in the real world, that is next to impossible. So again, the goal is not to stop the wet dream. The goal is to take the wet dream as an indicator that you need to step your vibration and your energy game up. And somehow your energy is leaking. And energy leakage could come from anywhere. It does not have to be relationships, females, drugs, and alcohol. It could even be friends. You could be around the wrong friends. You could be around friends that's taking your energy, breaking your vibration, breaking your frequency down, causing you to not have the ability to hold on to the energy, because they're weakening your force field, if I may say. And for this one, you look at, for example, if you look at a tuning fork, you take one tuning fork, you hit a tuning fork, the next tuning fork will vibrate, eventually vibrate onto that same frequency. However, when we apply that to the real world, you must be aware, you must be extremely aware and conscious and cautious of who you are around, who you attach yourself to, what type of energies that you have in your life, your friendships, their relationships. I'm gonna walk. Hopefully, this wind doesn't. I've been trying to stay still, because I notice when I move, it looks like sometimes uh, the wind picks up, and it makes this distorts the video. So I'm trying to avoid as much movement as much as possible. So that is why I'm not really doing too much of scenery. So anyhow, back to what I was saying. So you have to try to avoid uh, even the places that you go, the things that you do, is anything that could create some type of energy leak. Whereas, because to cultivate energy is think of energy like your body is like a bucket, and a bucket of water, or a cup of water, and it has holes in it. When you're on semen retention, the goal is to conserve this energy, and cultivate this energy, so this energy can grow, and you could use this energy for much more greater and more beneficial practices. Like I said, to achieve a goal, it might be a job, I mean, something that you want to do. This energy is the most potent energy that you could utilize to achieve whatever goal that may be that you're trying to achieve. So again, let's say you have friends in your life, they may be bringing you down, or they may not be supportive, or whatever the case may be. You have, let's say you have I'm just giving you an example about that vibration because it's much easier for somebody on a high vibration to lower their vibration than for somebody on a low vibration to raise their vibration. And we see that with the tuning fork example, because the tuning fork with the higher vibration, whichever one has the most strongest vibration, the weaker tuning fork will eventually resonate too. However, in the real world, let's say, for example, you are vibrating at a 10. This is another hypothesis, is that we balance each other out. This is just a hypothesis now. I'm saying that let's say you are at a 10 and you go around somebody who is a 1, eventually vibration wise, energy wise, eventually that person who's a 1 will come up to a 5 and you will drop down to a 5 as well. And you would see that again with the energy, with the tuning fork example. And that is similar to a real life example because, like I said, it is much easier for someone to lower their vibration than to raise their vibration. Because again, because of entropy, it's much easier to sit around, eat potato chips than to go to the gym. Because of entropy, it's much easier to masturbate than to try to get a real bitch or a real hoe. It's much easier to basically just not give anything, not care, not take care of yourself, and not shower, not bathe, not comb your hair, not groom your bed, or whatever. It's much easier to do that than to actually put effort into doing these things. Because again, the way entropy works, entropy will continuously to come back and continuously come back. And for those of you who don't know, entropy is just basically a level of disorder. And so the disorder is always easiest. It's easier for something to decay and break apart and fall apart than to grow and get stronger. Everything in this world will break apart, fall apart. So trying to hold semen retention is going against entropy. It is much easier to masturbate and release. It's much easier to watch porn. It's much easier to have sex than to not have sex. It's much easier to try not to ejaculate than it is to ejaculate. So again, these practices are not easy. So again, you have to conserve your energy and you have to treat your energy as one of the most valuable things that you could ever possess, because your energy is what's going to give you the vitality, the health, and the strength that you need to get you today and to be healthy and to be strong. And your aura, and again, your electromagnetic field is going to help you to prevent diseases, sicknesses, and things of that sort. So back to the tuning fork and friendships and relationships as being leaks. So again, let's say you're operating at a 10 and you have a friend that's operating at a 1 vibration. That friend is most likely going to try to bring you down to their level for one reason or another. In most cases, also, some friends or some individuals may see your progress and they may say, wow, I noticed that you're losing weight. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, I noticed that you're trying to lose weight. I noticed that you're looking good. I noticed that you're not doing crack anymore. That's good job, great job. I noticed that, whatever it may be that you're trying to do, there you may have a friend that some friends may, I'm gonna move. Hopefully, I don't know, hopefully the sound issue is not a problem. I'm gonna move away to the sun. So like I was saying, so now some friends, they would congratulate you. They would tell you, great job, great job. It looks like the wind is more, there's more this way. I need to go by the tree, I think. Anyhow, moving right along. So some friends will commend you and they will tell you great job and they would encourage you to keep going and keep doing what you want to do. So again, like I said, let's say you have made it to a 10. You've been trying to cut back on eating junk food. You've been trying to exercise. You've been trying to, stay, practice solitude. You want to practice some solitude. You have friends that come say, man, let's go to the club. Let's go to the club because that's what you guys do and that's what you always did. But now you're trying to do something new. And so it is easier for that friend to feel some type of way. And rather than encourage you to do better, they would most likely try to bring you down. Just like the tuning fork, they would, or a crab in a bucket, they would not They would not support you in most cases. They would just try to get you to come down to their level. And it's a lot easier over a period of time if you have, say, let's say you want to stop a bad habit. You know, I had bad habits. I used to drink. I used to smoke. It took me some time. It took me some time to get over those things. And I would say that semen retention, sacred secretion, NoFap, all of those things were the tools that also gave me the self-confidence and the self-discipline to actually stop those bad habits as well. So, like I was saying before, let's say you have a friend and you want to stop smoking, whatever it may be, cigarette, weed, and you guys were smoking partners, drinking partners, and you want to stop smoking or you want to stop drinking, but now you have this friend, you are vibrating at a 10, and this friend is vibrating at a 1. Some friends would encourage you, some would say, hey, great job, great job, great job, and that's not a problem. However, you do have some friends that would say, oh, why you stop drinking? Why you stop smoking? Why? And they would somewhat try to discourage you and make you feel like it's a bad thing that you're doing. And you don't have a problem with them drinking. You don't have a problem with them smoking, you know, because I would say it happened to me. Also, I used to drink, I used to smoke, I had friends, and I didn't care about whether they continued to drink or not. I was cool with it. I still was hanging out, I still love bitches and hoes no matter what. I still love bitches and hoes. You understand me? So that's why they call me Triple P. Pay, profit, and peace. You know what I'm saying? But anyhow, however, I discontinued some of the things, some of my drinking habits and all that. But I would still hang out with these guys and so forth. We would still hunt bitches and hoes. But they would have a problem with me being sober. You know, I didn't have a problem with them drinking or smoking. I didn't have a problem at all. I didn't have one issue with them drinking or smoking, but for some strange reason, they had a problem with me drinking and smoking. So again, just like the tuning fork, either three things is gonna happen. Either I'm gonna lower my standards and I'm gonna eventually drink to support this person, to make this person feel, a friend feel good, or start smoking again, or that friend is going to change and they're going to raise their vibration and they're going to say, man, wow, great job. I'm going to try and stop drinking and smoking myself. That is another option. They could raise their vibration and you don't have, and now you could be encouraging them to not continue on drinking or smoking or whatever the bad habit may be, or that friend would just leave. Now, those are the three options. Either you will lower your vibration because over time, you know, like I said, it's easier for you to lower your vibration than it is for these individuals to raise their vibration. So you have to be very careful who you give your energy to when you're trying to conserve your energy. That is very important. Also, I think I'm going to end on this note because this is a very long video. And also religion. Let's say you are extremely religious, and again, I'm not here particular pointing on a particular religion. However, I'm saying if you are in a religion, religions tend to also take away your power because you tend to give away a lot of your internal power to external things, external deities, if I may say, not realizing that the power is within you. And that power is within you. However, if you give your power away, then you also could be losing energy because, again, that is why I meditate, I advocate you could do 3 types of meditation. You could do, and I practice all 3 of these to some great degree. Degree. You could practice breath meditation. That's basically you breathe in, you take deep breaths, and then you exhale. You take deep breaths in, and then you exhale deep breaths out. That is one form, and you observe the breath, and that is one form of meditation. You observe the breath, and then I do that also X amount of time. You can break it up, and then also I do, the chant. I specifically I chant the Om. That is one meditation I do, and then after I finish all of those meditation methods, I go into mindfulness or watchfulness, whereas I watch my thoughts, and eventually I will go into that clear, silent space. And usually what I do is I usually use the breath work. I start off with the breathing exercise. And also one last tip is a very good idea when you're on semen retention to practice putting the tongue on the roof of the mouth. And that also will help cultivate and circulate energy when you are doing breath work as well. Because when you put the tongue at the beginning, at the roof of the mouth, what happens is that you create a circuit and that allows the energy to circulate and go from like a circle from the bottom chakras to the crown chakra and circulate throughout the body. So that is a good idea to practice putting the tongue, roof of the tongue of the mouth when doing deep inhales, and you could breathe through the nose, you inhale through the nose and you exhale through the nose, you while having the roof of the mouth, the tongue at the roof of the mouth. You do all of this, put the roof of the tongue on the mouth, put the tongue on the roof of the mouth, and you take a deep inhale through the nose, and then you exhale through the mouth, and then you could practice taking deep inhales through the nose and doing deep exhales through the mouth. And then again, like I said, practice chanting or some other practice also. Because when you do practice the automatic, that's AUM, not OM, AUM, you will feel the vibration starting off in the lower region of the belly, stomach, the sacral, sacrum area, and you will feel that moving up into the chest area, and then vibration moving up to the throat and head region as well. So those are just some meditation tips that you could practice along with other practices such as exercise and watching how you expel your energy, who you give your energy to, things of that nature. So with that being said, again, I think I'm going to end right now because this is a very long video. Again, the goal is not to stop uh, the wet dreams. The goal is to use the wet dreams as an indication that you are growing, and all it says is you need to do more work. And I assure you, once you put in more work from the three C's and a T, CCCT, you conserve more energy, again, not give away energy. You cultivate the energy, rest, sleep, drink water, watch your thoughts, how you think, again, exercise, things of that nature. Just try the healthy living as much as you can, and then you circulate. Use some breathing practices. Circulate, and also another technique you could use. You practice Kegel exercises. I don't do all of these things, just so we understand. Some of these things I do, some I don't. It's just that I've been doing this for such a long time. I've pretty much tried everything. That is why I said you could listen to me, because some guys, if you ask them how long they've been, they say, oh, I've did it on 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and they was able to stop it. But ask those guys if they made it to 6 years, 2 years, 3 years, they will tell you that's a big difference. 1 year and 6 years is a big difference. And another one last thing is, again, like I said, the Kegel exercise is where you squeeze the area, like when you want to pee, and you hold that area, like hold that muscle, like you're trying to not pee. That is the PC muscle. You practice squeezing that throughout the day, and before bed, you do a meditation, do a little breathing exercise, because before bed, you want to get rid of all of that excess negative or sexual energy that may be being built up throughout the day. And that is the purpose. You have to start some type of night ritual. You don't want to go to bed carrying all of that excess load, work, stress, family, relationships, whatever has been bringing you down, or whatever workload you had mentally. You want to get rid of that at some point before you go to bed. And that's why it's good to have a night routine where it's the very last thing you do. You try to have some type of breathing exercise, some type of meditation. And I know that's going to be very difficult for guys who are in relationships, especially guys who have a wife or a girlfriend and they sleep with somebody. I know it's very difficult to talk about going to meditate before bed, because most guys trying to smash before going to bed. But again, like I said, that is why I keep emphasizing, when you do have the opportunity to stop, when you're not in a relationship, this is the perfect time to take advantage of this and not go back and run into a relationship, but practice some of these practices that's going to benefit you in the long run. So again, like I said, you do Kegel exercises, that is going to strengthen the pelvic floor muscle. So when you do go to bed and you do have some type of buildup that you want to have, you might feel a buildup. By having control over that muscle, that is going to also help to reduce or stop the actual ejaculation. And after time also, when you become extremely more conscious of certain areas in your life through meditation and so forth, when you do have dreams, you may also even have the ability to wake up in that dream right before you have an ejaculation, or you might realize that you're having a sexual dream. You might realize the dream is not real, and you might also wake up as well. So with that being said, I think that I covered pretty much everything that I could think of on the top of the dome. I can't think of anything else. Oh, and one last thing. Uh, Again, this is an astrology channel. This is an astrology channel, and my astrology chart. I told you guys, in which I can't remember which video it was in. The last video, I don't remember. Pin, Prophet, and Priest. Triple P part 1, part 2, part 3, I said that I had Leo was in my 11th house, and I had Leo was the house of fun, recreation, romance, and dating. And I said that that was one of the reasons I was so fortunate to have so much relations, so much romance and dating and so forth, because of my natal chart having that to be a part of my destiny. And I also had the part of fortune in the 11th house. This is for those who know anything about astrology, would be a reason why I was so successful at attracting women in my life, because it was in my natal chart that I had Leo in my 11th house and my groups and friends, which meant that I would have masses of groups of romance and dating and all type of procreation, other things of that nature that has something to do with my sex life. And also, I would like to say that I have, to end on this note, I have uh, I have Mars, I have Lilith, and I have Neptune in my third house. In my third house, which is the house of communication, uh, and I have Sagittarius in my third house. The third house is run by Gemini, and Gemini is run by Mercury. Mercury is the house of communication, and Sagittarius is, if I remember clearly, the ninth house, the house of wisdom, and Sagittarius is run by Jupiter, and Jupiter is the house of expansion, the house of expansion, the house of luck, the house of happiness, and so forth. So with that being said, Sagittarius deals with wisdom, knowledge, all type of esoteric stuff, religion, spirituality, all those different things. So having having Neptune, Neptune is a planet that deals with spirituality, dreams, and things of that nature. And Mars is a house that deals with aggression, anger, energy, being direct. And then we have and then we have Lilith. Lilith is a house of Lilith deals with rebellion, change, and so forth. So by having Sagittarius in the third house of communication, all it says is that I was, I would be, I would have, I would not be so, I would rebel, I guess, if I may say, I would rebel against traditional religious beliefs and things of that sort. I would have a strong communication ability. As we can see, I've not stopped talking yet, and I'm still talking. I'm trying to end this video right now, and I'm still talking. So, talking about spirituality and things of and knowledge and wisdom and great spiritual depths and things of that sort is a part of my communication style. It's a part of my learning and teaching abilities. I have this gift naturally. So that is one reason I can ramble on and on and on. So again, for those of you guys who may not be aware, again, like I said, I am an astrologer. I do teach astrology classes. So as I continue to go on with these videos, I will also share some of these astrological facts about myself. And if you too are also interested in learning about astrology, just click the link or something. But anyhow, with that being said, for those of you who stuck around this far, I really do appreciate the fact that you guys have stuck around. And if you guys have watched the video from, I don't know, this is probably a 2 hour video now. It's a very long video. But again, for those of you who stuck around this far and who have watched this for this long, thank you very much. I truly appreciate it. And please like, share, and subscribe. And go back and watch part 1, part 2, and part 3. And I think my next video, I'm going to make a video on the sacred secretion before I start getting into my classes and teaching you guys more about astrology. And the reason I'm talking about NoFap, semen retention, and the sacred secretion is because those are the things that I did that led me into finding my purpose, and those are the things that helped me into becoming a much stronger spiritual speaker, teacher, leader, and practitioner as well, and which later led me to becoming an astrologer also. So that is why I'm talking about these things, because these things, when you practice these practices, those things are going to help you to find your purpose, and they're going to help you to build character so that you may not falter in the areas that you need to be strong in when you're trying to just develop yourself in general. So with that being said, once again, thank you so much. And again, the goal is not to stop the wet dreams. The goal is to use the wet dreams as an indicator to just simply let you know that you need to practice some more discipline, and in those areas, the CCCTs, you need to conserve more energy, cultivate more energy, circulate more energy, and you need to transform more energy into some other beneficial practices. So with that being said, I would like to end this video again, once again. Thank you so much for watching this video this far. Please like, share, and subscribe. And like I always say, may the stars shine brightly on you always, and may the planets work in your favor always as well. Triple P, and I'm out.
Oh.